Well, ladies and gentlemen, some of the things I've been talking about regarding the whole Gamergate 2.0 thing is how you're going to have mainstream gaming coming out and speaking out against gamers because let's be real, they are completely corrupted. The entire gaming industry, just like a lot of the modern day Hollywood, is all very corrupted, okay? It's completely rotten to the core. But we do have some people that are trying to speak out, and in this case, we have the former team leader for World of Warcraft, Mark Kern, who just recently explained how ESG influences video game developers and how it will destroy them eventually over time. Now, I think this is very important. I think it's important to have someone like Mark Kern coming out and speaking out against this stuff because you're going to have people that have their heads in the sand and they're trying to swear none of this is happening. They're trying to say, oh, diversity is happening organically. This is not forced. None of this is forced. There's no conspiracy. There's no BlackRock ESG funding. Meanwhile, there's a literal video out there, and I believe it's in this article, of the CEO of BlackRock talking about how he forces companies to do ESG, and if they don't, they're going to get their funding cut. So let's get into this article, guys, from that Park Place. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kern recently detailed how influential ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance stands are for the video game developers. If you're unfamiliar with the term ESG, it is essentially a set of standards that a number of governments and financial institutions have created to determine how they will invest their money. As noted by BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, the standards are used to force behaviors on companies seeking investment for their projects. Fink detailed during an appearance at the New York Times Deal Book Conference, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender, or race, or just any way you want to say, the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not just recruiting, it is development as well, as Ken said. When asked about how he plans to force change, Fink said that it has to be imbued in the culture of a firm. It has to be talked about. It has to be shown. Behaviors across the entire firm and entire region have to be similar. And every citizen of the firm has to understand what is acceptable behaviors and what are unacceptable behaviors. Ladies and gentlemen, this is literal what we're talking about. I mean, I don't know how clearer we have to put it other than that. If you want to hear it from the horse's mouth here, let me play this video and let's hear it.
It's just, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said.
How do you force change, though? I mean, Larry, BlackRock has really been in the forefront of the ESG movement within corporate governance and a real leader, and yet change is so slow. So what is, and Ken as well, how do you force change when it is so incremental and so gradual? How do you do something more radical? Have you thought about that? Has the board of American Express thought about more radical things we could do to enhance diversity and inclusion?
Because it has to be imbued in the culture of a firm. It has to be talked about. It has to be shown. Behaviors across the entire firm in every region have to be similar. And every citizen of the firm has to understand what is acceptable behaviors and what are unacceptable behaviors.
So again, guys, right from the horse's mouth, I don't want to hear this nonsense about, oh, they're not forcing anything. Diversity is totally organic. All the DEI initiatives, totally organic. They're doing it because they want to. They're not doing it because they're forced to. No, absolutely not. Bullshit. You literally just heard it from Larry Fink's mouth. You heard it from the CEO of BlackRock himself. It doesn't get any more obvious than that. So it says, an interview with Jeremy Hambly on the Quartering YouTube channel discussing Sweet Baby Inc.'s harassment of Brazilian gamer Cabrutus and the company's mission and activities, Kern detailed how influential this type of investment is. He said it's very profitable. There's an entire industry built up around DEI initiatives, consultancy, and sensitivity reading, which has plagued novels for a long time. I have many writer friends who were basically edged out of the publishing houses and went independent because of stuff like this. It's a very profitable industry, he reiterated, and it's financially motivated, and it's as old as time. Consultancy is a very profitable business. There are huge firms on the Wall Street that do this, and it's exactly that. You create a problem, you go in and you say you're going to solve it, but actually just move the deck chairs around the Titanic, because if you actually solved it, they wouldn't rehire you. And then if you have a recruiting business stream and this is as old as time. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, it's very obvious and very clear this thing's a scam. The whole thing is a scam. Imagine how good of a salesperson Kim Belair has to be if she can convince studios that they actually need her to do something called sensitivity reading. Imagine selling that as a skill. Imagine selling that as a job. Oh yeah, I'll make sure your book is sensitive to as many readers as possible, because everybody and their mother are sensitive fucks these days and can't just pick something for themselves. Imagine that, right? Think about this for a second. You know what sensitivity reading used to be? It used to be called reviews, right? If you read reviews on a book and they said certain things about the book, you might not actually want to pick it up because it might be something you're not interested in. Or maybe it's something that might trigger you, for all I know. But now you need sensitivity reading. Sensitivity readers, it's the fakest job I've ever heard of, and yet they exist massively throughout the gaming industry. It says Kern then brought the conversation to Sweet Baby Inc.'s narrative consulting business. The real question I have is, why writing? Why are these game companies hiring writers? It is the smallest portion of your game team. It is the cheapest part of your budget. It makes no sense to outsource it unless you're after a specific expertise that you don't have in-house. And what is that expertise that is marketed by Sweet Baby Inc.? It's wokeness. We sell wokeness. Why is wokeness valuable to that company? And for that, you have to get into where I was, CEO level game companies, how games are funded, ESG, and why that matters to your credit score, and why that helps you get your game funded when you could check boxes on hiring firms like this, he said. And then later in the interview, while discussing Sweet Baby Inc.'s involvement with Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and how the game likely lost Warner Bros. Up to $100 million, Kern said it's not that games are upset about that. Oh, hey, we have some diversity in the game. It's actually the way they go about it with pure tokenism, with phoning in weak characters instead of creating new, strong characters. And this is what I personally talk about all the time. I talk about the fact that diversity is never the issue. You know why? Because diversity's been around for decades. These white liberals that work in the gaming space, they just found out that black people existed up in the last 10 years. That's how they act anyway. Because I know for the content that I've consumed over my life that for decades, black people have existed in gaming, diverse characters have existed in gaming. Obviously, trans people didn't exist in gaming because trans people is a fad that didn't exist up until recently. You obviously did have hermaphrodites. You had those kind of characters every once in a blue moon, but ultimately trans people as we know it now, the modern day fad, yeah, that hasn't been in gaming because that just started existing. So of course they're not going to be in previous games, but ultimately diverse characters in terms of ethnical and race, like of course they've been in gaming for many years. You just didn't notice it because you weren't playing it. That's the difference. These people who want to pretend like diversity only just started now is because they didn't actively engage in anything diverse when they were growing up. So in their worldview, their very limited worldview, they think that black people just started existing recently. That's how they love to act. And I know that that's complete bullshit. It's like a white liberal discovering the last dragon and trying to call it racist. Like, it's the most stupid thing in the world. And then it says, and more importantly, it's about vindictiveness, to destroy the past, to destroy the IP, to ignore the source material, and to tear apart those beloved characters in some sort of fitful rage that we don't understand, that is very disingenuous. He continued, and I think that is tremendous reaction to Suicide Squad. Well, Suicide Squad lost an insane amount of money, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that it lost Warner Brothers up to about $100 million is freaking nuts, and they deserve every bit of it. He then shared his opinion on how this will affect the way games are financed. This is going to have an immense financial impact. The way games are funded, you don't have to use your own money. Even EA games are hugely expensive to make. They are upwards of 250, sometimes 600 million for certain live games. It's incredible how expensive they are. And to do that, your CFO is your best friend. Kern explained, you're counting on your CFO to get your tax breaks, to put studios in regions which are financially favorable, and you will borrow the cheap money, you will get the cheap money to do it. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it all goes down to funding. We've talked about this many times. Obviously, these studios need the funding, and they're trying to pretend as if they're not getting the funding from good old consultancy firms or even just good old BlackRock. And they love to pretend as if none of this is happening. They put their heads in the sand. They want to call you conspiracy theorists. And meanwhile, it literally came out of the horse's mouth. So if you don't believe me, go believe your overlord daddy BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. Go believe him, because he just flat out said it in a video for you to watch. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.